prick! Who do you work for, DreamWorks? Answer me, huh?
We don't work for anybody.
Oh boy, I sure believe that. You just tried to ruin Disney Company's big night for your own amusement, huh?
The hell did you do to us?
Shut up!
Black and blue, I crawl along the wreckage of what now is gone. Back to you to fight another day. I'll go on and on and on and on. I'll face it, the demons I created with every last part of me. The pain will fade and I'll go on and on and on and on. Black and blue, I crawl to you. Black and blue, I crawl to you.
And we are live.
Do alive,
Yes.
do alive.
Welcome to the DreamWorks episode.
The dreamy DreamWorks. Let's fish on a moon because I'm a little, because I'm a sexy boy on the moon.
Oh wow.
All right, we're gonna talk about the beginning of DreamWorks and how it started, like that clip from South Park.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about DreamWorks. It was the first mini major studio in a while. It was founded by 3 people: Steven Spielberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and David Geffen. They made a pretty successful mini major studio. They made a bunch of really good movies like Saving Private Ryan, but what people most know them for now is DreamWorks Animation. DreamWorks Animation started with a little movie called Ants.
And Ants is a very interesting history because what happened was a few of the people who worked on A Bug's Life didn't like how A Bug's Life looked. They thought it was too childlike. So what they did was, fuck that, we'll make our own movie. Let's go hop on that new DreamWorks people and make our own Ants movie. Is that pretty good? Is that an accurate representation?
Basically, yes. What was funny is that Jeffrey Katzenberg thought he owned the idea of A Bug's Life.
Oh,
Yeah. So we
yeah.
pretty much thought of competing with Disney because he wants to prove his former company wrong and treat them as a rival. So he decided to make a movie the same as
Yep.
their competitors, with basically the same setting but with different plots.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that Ants is a movie that no one talks about.
Yeah, oddly enough, especially considering that it's also the first movie by Pacific Data Images, which will become very important to DreamWorks' history later down the road.
Yes.
Yes. So it's a little sad that Ants doesn't get as much attention as it could, but you know, Bug's Life, those circus bugs, the guy who's in every Pixar movie that has the New York accent.
Yep, Ratzenberger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the voice of Ham, the voice of Mac, the voice of
Yes.
the Adorable Snowman.
Yeah, the voice of. Yeah, I swear, I don't understand why they don't make a Pixar movie starring him as the main character.
That would be way too on the nose.
Yeah.
It-
So speaking of A Bug's Life, like DreamWorks, like that was DreamWorks' first successful attempt at making an animation movie, but it didn't have the more success as the Bug's Life did on Disney's side.
It's because unlike DreamWorks, A Bug's Life already had a predecessor that proves that they are a more trustworthy studio, Toy Story,
Yeah,
to
kind of
do the
interesting.
job.
I mean, Pixar really got experience with Toy Story, and with A Bug's Life, you can tell it's visually similar to Toy Story, but they're more creative with the visuals. I mean, with Ants, though, Ants actually looks a lot better than A Bug's Life.
Yeah,
like, in
because-
retrospective.
At least,
Yeah, and
at least Ant ants look way more serious than A Bug's Life.
Hey,
Exactly.
that's the tone. The tone is a lot more serious in Ants, because like everything looks a little bit more realistic to the animals they're based on. I haven't seen Ants. I think I only saw it once, and that was like ages ago, because I think one time my parents rented Ants instead of A Bug's Life at the movie theater because reasons, and we saw it and it was very edgy. So for people in the audience may think that DreamWorks was all 3D, but
Not
not the
really.
next movie.
It
The
wasn't.
next movie is
The
The
Prince
Prince
of Egypt.
of Egypt.
Alright, so this came out around 2 months after Ants, and it's actually a very, good epic about the Bible. Surprisingly
Yeah, it's
enough.
pretty much a religious,
I think
movie.
Mr. Enter showed it during his Bubsy review at the beginning, which that'll come when we talk. One day we'll talk about critics. One day.
Always
Yeah, so
talking
pretty much DreamWorks started off doing, movies about, historical times.
Yeah, I believe that one of their things was they wanted to show more controversial and edgy topics that
Yeah.
cutesy wootsy Disney didn't want to show.
Yeah, so pretty much, and also kind of like Disney, they had the idea of the 2D standard Disney animation, but how did their animation look for like the Prince of Egypt? Um,
Well,
like their animation just seemed to look like if it was like an average Disney movie, but DreamWorks thought of it a more serious tone, way more serious. No music, like kid friendly music, more of a like
yeah,
edgy music.
yeah. It's like in the beginning, it was like if DreamWorks and Pixar were no, Disney was Sonic, and DreamWorks was Shadow the Hedgehog in terms of tones.
Well, yeah, like they kind of show everything that was true that probably would have scared so many young viewers who watched the movie, like
Yeah,
babies
and
being killed or something.
yeah, and that's the thing about DreamWorks. They weren't aimed at younger kids. They were aimed at older kids and teenagers. And that's the thing that parents back then didn't know how to portray.
Yeah, pretty much DreamWorks try to be this, not gonna be super kid friendly, not gonna have so many, music songs in so many random songs and scenarios like that. Had it more in the necessary time.
What's interesting is that it grossed higher than Ants. But
Yeah, so
and now we're gonna have to talk about the movie that is both criminally underrated and unfortunately the least successful in terms of gross of the DreamWorks movies.
The
The Road
El
to
Dorado.
God, yeah.
I remember loving
yeah,
that
so
movie.
basically it was about the Spanish conquistadors, like the time when the Spanish wanted to freaking buy everything. Disney
Yeah,
like that today.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was about two con men who had the map to a lost city. And
Yeah,
then the
so they
and then the people in that lost city thought they were gods.
yeah, so they tried to well they wanted to do was just steal a gold like how Spanish people were in like the early time back in the times where they just want to, rule the world pretty much.
Yeah, and one of them becomes power hungry, and the other one's still trying to stick to the plan. And then there's this hot chick that wants to come with them.
Oh my god, Shell. She's hot.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, and
honestly,
also they try to take gold.
yeah, she was the first sexy girl of the DreamWorks line, and trust me, there are a lot of girls that everyone found sexy, but she was the first.
Yeah, so like after that movie, it was really successful, but like after that, DreamWorks did a direct-to-video similar to the animation between the other two movies. Like
It's
it
just
was
yeah,
called Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph, and like, yeah, and it's sad because but then again, which is sad because the next movie, which had like half of the budget, managed to gross like almost 3 times as much. Chicken Run.
Oh yeah, so basically, DreamWorks decided to team up with Aardman, the clay motion company. People know them, like a lot of people, most of the people know them for like anime, Wallace and Gromit and all, and they decided to team up to make a movie together. And the movie was Chicken Run,
Chicken
which
Run.
basically had, most of the mostly British actors, besides one actor that wasn't British, which that was Mel Gibson, who voiced the Rocky the Rooster. But yeah, the plot. So like people, so the plot of the of the movie is basically chickens trying to save their lives from getting, you know,
Killed and
freaking
eaten.
freaking baked from like to be in the chicken pot pie, which they don't want to, but like
And trust me,
they're the owners, like the owners really want to, have a chicken like a pie business, but the like the lead chicken Ginger wants to prevent that and trying to leave the chicken, you know what it is.
Yeah, like, I'll say this. If you want to make any kind of vegan, show them this movie.
Yeah, pretty much. This is against like people that don't like to see animals being killed. PETA.
Yeah, but unlike PETA, this is actually a really good movie.
Yeah, it's really good, but like, it's like, well, people don't consider it as the first ever 3D animated movie because it was just a clay motion more of it because it wasn't really made by DreamWorks. It was just they were partnered with Aardman. It was,
Yeah,
but like,
and in terms of the claymation, they actually did a really good job, especially at the ending where they made that giant contraption.
yeah, especially the ending where all the chickens are free and they found an island, especially, and that like the whole entire setup was very good.
Yeah,
God.
Ending.
And here's now the first 4 movies we've talked about, they all did pretty well, but the sad is they never really got much praise. Unfortunately, the next movie put every
Is the
one of
main.
those movies is
to
gets
shame in terms of
every
popularity.
in terms of popularity, it got all the praise.
This
SAD
And it
is
is Shrek.
Yes,
Oh,
the
hell,
meme
there.
itself. This is what
Awesome.
made DreamWorks Animation a thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what pretty much made the company a big money in terms of money, in terms of success, in terms of merchandise, and in terms of praise.
And in terms of defining all the humor of the 2000s.
Exactly, like everyone tried to copy Shrek. Even Disney tried to copy Shrek at one point.
Yeah,
Little.
Chicken Little, but like,
God,
yeah, but like,
we'll save
like
that for
Shrek-
the Disney episode.
well, the movie Shrek, it had a lot of money, but in terms of the plot, it was still. What do you think of the plot, Decent, of Shrek, of the first film?
Yeah, here's the thing with Shrek, like, it was really the movie that made fairy tale parodies popular, and people found that funny because whenever they went to see an animated movie in theaters, it was usually a Disney Renaissance musical. Shrek just took a shit all over that, and people thought that
pretty
was
much.
hilarious.
Pretty much. What was that guy's name that was for Disney again?
Michael Eisner? He was actually
Yeah.
made fun of in Shrek as Lord Farquaad. Notice how that sounds
Yeah.
like fuckwad.
He's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
by the way, I like how the part is like, oh yeah, that fairy tale crap.
I remember, some of you may die, but that is a choice I am willing to make.
So pretty
Also-
much they're trying to make fun of Disney in all the ways. Like they try to, you know how Disney adapted so many fairy tale characters like that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do
But Shrek wasn't really a
Fairy tale movie.
character yet.
Movie per se.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
because,
just
like,
it kind of subverted what you'd expect out of a fairy tale film.
now the
yeah, pretty much.
thing about Shrek is that there's two types of Shrek. We were talking about Shrek back then. Right now we have to talk about the movie itself now, which
Exactly.
It's just known as a meme now, like the first movie. Like every time there's a poop puppy, like YTP, it has to be the first film.
yeah, and
Exactly.
the thing about Shrek is that, like, you cannot watch the movie at all without being reminded about everything on the internet. Because, want to know why? If you take everything away from the internet and you watch Shrek, it's boring as fuck.
Yeah, like, looking back now, it's kind of a boring movie, especially in comparison to Shrek 2.
We're
Which
gonna
talk
get
about
to
later.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like Shrek was the reason why DreamWorks was there at the first place because, like,
Oh my god, back in the
Shrek,
days
like-
when Shrek wasn't a meme and it was just a movie.
it's
Now
hard to
a
believe that
goddamn
movie's supposed to
meme.
be 20 years old. I thought it would be
Yeah.
20 years old.
I swear, like, they eventually they're gonna find a way to make a Shrek 5. I can tell it. Like,
Well,
they'd be, cause like,
well, it'll
companies
be
are companies.
animated differently. It will be animated different for a way when they're in that era where they were acquired by the company. We're gonna talk about that later on, but like, yeah, that movie just became a. Well, right now the first movie it's just a meme, not really much of a recognizable icon.
But Shrek
Okay.
2, however, is a classic, and we're gonna talk about that later.
But first, we have to talk about horses. In other
Yes,
words, Spirit.
Spirit.
It's a fucking boring movie.
Oh boy, like, I don't really have much to say about Spirit. I find it kind of boring as well.
I think it's just nay. Next. Okay, Sinbad, Legend of Seven Seas. Otherwise known as the last 2D animated movie DreamWorks
And also
did.
got it. And also eventually got its, but we're gonna talk about that later too.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Sinbad and DreamWorks 2D in general, like, when they did 2D, especially with Road to El Dorado, they got really creative with the animation, like, it was, like, trippier than Disney could ever do.
Yeah,
And-
so like it was way more serious than Disney's animation.
Exactly.
It felt
But
more,
like
yeah,
with like Spirit, it was basically just like how Stripes, kind of like Stripes, but just like a way better version of Stripes.
Basically.
the thing about, yeah, what I've known about Sinbad is simply that, like, it's a sea. I remember it's based on a sea tale. Like, or it's based on the actor from Good Burger. I didn't know much about the movie myself, but here's a movie I also don't really know much about, what apparently DSim does. Shrek 2.
Oh boy.
Well, first you missed the movie. Okay, yeah, Shrek 2. But like Shrek 2 was the movie that really made DreamWorks way,
Yeah, Shrek 2 is the movie that really showed the world that DreamWorks is this major studio that can compete with Pixar.
and it's a powerhouse now.
It got to. But the thing is, the sad thing about me is, I only know Shrek 2 from one thing. My first video game.
Yeah,
But-
like, I remember, one of my first video games was this Shrek party game.
Yeah, I remember Shrek 2, the video game where it was a beat 'em up with all the Shrek characters. I remember smacking people as Gingerbread Man. Okay.
Yeah, but like Shrek 2 is basically,
It's an interesting.
The more joke-focused, the more, funny movie.
Funny,
Like, it really defined the identity of DreamWorks as a studio going forward.
yeah, and
Yeah.
also it was way enjoyable than the first movie.
Yeah, and honestly, it's criminally overlooked.
And that's the most successful film to date.
Yeah,
like,
and
in terms of like money.
Yeah, in terms of
The-
gross. And,
the issue.
go ahead, Tix.
Yeah, it's just like I said, it's criminally underrated because people overlook it for the first one. Like I said, from the memes.
You're talking about the meme world, but in terms of like actual credits, it is,
It is
most
actually.
known.
The problem is I barely remember it because I only saw it a few times back when I was little.
Yeah, and I only remember seeing it once, but I don't remember a single detail from Shrek 2.
And that's the thing. The only detail you remember is the first one.
Exactly. The only thing I remember was the first one existing, and I haven't even seen the first one.
Now
Well,
here's
I
the
seen the first one. It's just a bit different than the second one. A little bit different.
thing about Shrek 1 is that you have to go into it with a completely empty mind and look at it that way. But
Yeah,
which
you
is
have to
the
really look at it as DreamWorks Shrek, not necessarily Beam Shrek.
Yeah,
Being
and
Shrek, you're like,
and there's one line in the first Shrek that always ruins that for me. What are you doing in my swamp?
That has been memed
and
so
also
much
this is
that it
this
lost
movie.
all its fucking power.
Yeah, and
Like
then
this is the first Shrek movie to include, the character Puss in Boots.
oh, I love
Yeah.
Puss in Boots. I remember my sister loved Puss in Boots. God, si, mon ami. I meet your menu. Angar.
But like that was the first time that Puss in Boots was, a likable character.
Now let's talk about in most people's eyes the movie that's the worst in terms of
That's probably
nowadays.
the most unknown one. That's considered underrated. Nobody really
Shark
remember that
Tale.
much of that movie. Yeah,
Shark
Shark
Tale
Tale.
with
Pretty
Will
much a movie about, yeah, with Will Smith, who is which is basically the life of a shark, not a shark, of a fish that's not scared of, I don't know.
Sharks. Will Smith fish.
Exactly, Will Smith fish. He gets credited as the Shark Slayer.
Yeah, and then apparently he befriends this shark named Lenny, who's Jack Black.
Yep.
Who eventually voices
annoying.
someone. Eventually, someone voices 4 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not the last we'll see of Jack Black, not by a long shot.
No,
here's
not really, but like this
No.
movie try to be a competitor versus The Incredibles, but The Incredibles did way better.
Exactly.
And another thing, it's basically Finding Nemo but worse. But
It's basically DreamWorks trying to attempt another movie, trying to make it better, but not really. It just basically
trying to make their own version of Finding Nemo by including mob bosses and stuff. But here's the thing: it got overshadowed by a movie that came out just a month afterwards. SpongeBob
Madagascar.
movie.
Exactly.
No, I was gonna get to that. So now we're gonna go to the thing that's milked even more than Shrek nowadays. Madagascar! I like to move it.
movie.
Move it. Yeah, like even that song is still occasionally sung to this day.
Yeah, because Madagascar, in my opinion, was a million times more powerful than Shrek.
Yep.
Because
Yeah, and also Madagascar was the last film independently distributed by DreamWorks. It was the last one.
Yeah, it was the last DreamWorks animation movie to be distributed by DreamWorks Pictures. Later, Paramount would take over that responsibility for DreamWorks Animation.
Yeah, so Madagascar 1, it wasn't the best, but it was all right. It's like
Exactly.
is,
Madagascar 1 is alright.
But the thing about Madagascar is this. It introduced a ton of strong characters.
well, yeah,
Like
there's like other backside characters as well, like King Julian and the
King
penguins.
Julian, yeah, literally. Like, when it comes to creating characters in a franchise and having them pull their own weight, Madagascar might be one of the best examples of that.
Yeah, because people don't really know the main characters. Everyone just knows the side characters. Everyone knows King Julian,
pretty
everyone
much.
knows the penguins.
Yeah, and this
Yeah,
is
for
and
like
we'll-
the main characters, they don't really care much about the main characters. They really care more of the side characters. But like the first movie, like nobody to this day nobody even remembers of the first movie. They only remember the eventual sequels. But like
I do remember the first movie. It was interesting. It's interesting that the conflict of the movie shows up a little bit later than usual. Basically, the conflict is not, oh, they're not going to get home. The conflict is Alex is getting more hungry and he's going to eat his friends.
And I actually found that creepy as a kid. Like, I found the idea of just thinking that your friends are food was just creepy. And that kind of
Well,
scared me.
whoa, that in real life, that kind of would happen in real life.
I also
But,
remember
like,
the joke when Alex is trying to set up some
Yeah.
a help sign, and then it collapses and it says hell.
yeah, so this movie earned like 75 million, which is still good, but like in terms of
No,
like reviews, it was pretty like
Actu-
mixed reviews.
Tonio,
Yeah.
it was made on 75 million. It earned 533 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the movie it wasn't really the greatest.
Yeah, it wasn't
And
really the
and
greatest.
either
Madagascar
critics.
got better and better as it went on. Unlike other
Yeah,
Yeah,
franchises.
so after Madagascar, eventually, like a couple months later, DreamStonks decided to team up again with Aardman, and they made a Wallace and Gromit film, like a full-length Wallace and Gromit film.
The Curse
yeah,
of the
and
Were-Rabbit.
this is the first movie that actually
Was great.
this is actually the last movie that was made by DreamWorks Pictures. It wasn't Shark Tale, it was this one.
Well,
So,
technically, it's not. It's like the technically it's not really a DreamWorks movie, per se. It's made by Animation. They just team up with them so they could, have a
For their
huge
business deal.
like
yeah,
recognition
have a
in
better
here
shot.
in the US more than have it in the UK.
God, it was only made on 30 million, but it actually made like quite like four
Almost
times as
200
much.
million, but like it had good reviews. Like this movie was pretty. It was super funny, like in terms of comedy and everything. Like what average Wallace and Gromit short was.
Yeah, it made people know who Wallace and Gromit are. A guy who likes cheese and a dog that are
Yeah,
made of
pretty much
clay.
like before the movie came out, people didn't know much about these characters because they were mostly popular in the UK because Arben is from there. And but when Jervis decided to bring them as a in the big screen, when they were teaming up again with Arben, they decided to make a movie of it with a convenient fashion, how it's supposed to be, and people liked it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like the Curse of the Were-Rabbit is pretty much the reason us Americans know about Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, so
yeah,
like after the success of that with the partnership with Arben,
yeah.
Jervis decided to have this direction partnership with you know what it is, a
Paramount
company that's owned
Pictures.
by Viacom. Yeah,
Paramount
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 Pictures.
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 Now
And this
here's
starts the Paramount era of DreamWorks. In my
now
opinion, the
here
best
Yep,
one.
and the best one, probably the best era of DreamWorks. That's when DreamWorks was, a powerhouse now in terms like
yeah.
in
Yeah,
popularity, in terms of money, in terms of
Now
success. Like, I like that
exactly.
era. That was the
Me
greatest
too.
era of DreamWorks, in my opinion.
you know what I now here's a movie I think is. Remember I said The Road to El Dorado was the most underrated movie? Well, that's the most underrated 2D movie. In my opinion, the most underrated 3D movie is Over the Hedge.
Oh my
Bec-
god, Over the Hedge.
God, I
With
love.
Bruce Willis in it.
Oh God,
William
I
Shatner,
loved
Steve
Over the
Carell,
Hedge.
all these great comedians. They
Yeah,
really
they
gave it a lot.
got. Yeah, because and the thing is, Over the Head. I remember playing the video game of that too on my GameCube. And the thing about Over the Hedge is that like it's it's got a lot of good stuff. It's the humor is more witty in this one. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
and also the story. So got
And also,
I
there's one movie that try to rip it off. It's another movie that's not a DreamWorks movie. You know what it is? A movie that tried to rip off this movie.
that's later on in the 2010s.
Well, yeah, it's later on in this eventual like century.
Yeah, the nut job.
Yeah, the not like we might talk about, but like we don't know much about the studio because that
Uh,
studio, I don't know.
I'll make sure to tell you that in an episode if we ever talk about like miscellaneous studios.
All right, let's talk about the other movie, the last one they ever partnered with Armin, DreamWorks, and the first Armin picture slash DreamWorks movie that was distributed by Paramount Pictures. It's Flushed Away.
Yes,
Oh,
and the
so
thing with Flushed Away is that Aardman kind of abandoned claymation because they couldn't do water, so they just did it in CG.
Yeah,
yeah, that's the. I do agree that like sometimes you have to make sacrifices if you want to make a decent movie.
well, the
And
movie wasn't. Well, the movie they had the highest ratings like the other two were.
yeah, it's mainly because by its premise alone, that movie was literally the definition of toilet humor, and you have to be Aardman basically to make that at least somewhat decent. And Flushed Away was somewhat decent.
There is a
Yeah, it was
problem with
alright.
if there is a problem with Flushed Away is the budget was was $149 million. They only made 178 million with the movie.
Yeah,
Which
because
Yeah.
as I said, it's literally the definition of toilet humor, and that kind of looks bad in the trailer.
and it looks
Yeah, so
and that's just a thing that actually it's something that's foreshadowed from our Nickelodeon one last week. Gross Out doesn't work in 3D, as shown by the early episodes of Fanboy and Chum Chum. So that's why they stopped it, and that's why Fanboy and Chum Chum chose to do other types of humor, and that's why they don't really attempt 3D Gross Out movies. That's
and
why you
also
don't see them.
too, and also too, like I said, this was the last time Aardman and DreamWorks team up together because
At that point, I think Aardman had enough money that they could start something else.
yeah, they did eventually team up with Sony and other companies. But let's talk about the next movie after this, Shrek
Now-
the Third.
Oh,
my
God!
god, that's when Shrek kinda bottomed out.
Now,
Yeah,
here's
that's when Shrek bust. That's how Shrek busted in terms of
Yes,
quality.
remember-
It's because it's like the movie was, I don't know what I think of the movie.
Let me try and think of the movie. You see, Shrek the Third, it had high expectations. Here's what I think could have been done. They should have took their time. They should have waited a year or two. Like they should have actually worked on it a little bit more. Because if retooled a bit, it could have been great. But in the way that it is, it's a movie that's aged almost as bad as Shark Tale. Because
Yeah,
there are many things I don't like about this movie. Like, for instance, I know Shrek technically has to become king because Fiona's father is dying, and
yeah.
basically, and Shrek being the lazy thing, he doesn't want to be king. He wants to go back to his swamp. Now, if Shrek actually cared about Fiona, maybe he might have had a part of the movie where, like, he tried to be king a little bit longer, and then consider getting the new guy. But
And
no,
then Fiona's cousin becomes like eventually,
now the king, and then you just have the Prince Charming guy getting all these random villains. And my least favorite part of the movie, Donkey and Puss in Boots switching bodies. Ugh. Oh, there's so many things wrong
Do you
with
forgot
that.
about that movie, D-Sib? Do you remember that much of Shrek the Third? Me, I did not remember that much of
I
that
did
movie. I
not
didn't really
Shrek the
watch
Third-
it a lot.
Yeah, I did
They
not remember Shrek the Third, and I don't really want to remember much about Shrek the Third.
They swapped
I
bodies.
remember- I
Let me
remember they had toys in McDonald's and all. Like DreamWorks had a lot of deals with McDonald's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Disney didn't really want to work with him anymore.
Yeah, the thing about
Yeah,
the thing about Shrek, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, McDonald's. Now here's the thing about Shrek the Third is that that body swapping scene, it's literally a third of the movie being each other's characters, which
Yeah.
honestly ruins it for me because of my hidden shame.
yeah. So that movie was a bust in 2007. Then in 2007, there was another bust.
According
Actu-
to all known laws of aviation, this is one of the weirdest movies DreamWorks has ever produced. B movie.
The B movie.
Oh damn, B movie. Actually, I think the B movie actually was better. I remember
It was better
lov-
than Shrek, but it was still a bust.
Yeah.
No pun intended. So it has a B, but yeah.
the B movie, I don't see it as sort of a bust. It just seems like it's
B-movie
writ-
is honestly anime. Like, it's written like a Seinfeld episode, and that's both its greatest strength and its greatest downfall.
yeah, like
Well,
it's like
here.
it's 50-50. It's different from other movies in the fact that the humor is more sitcom-like rather than just normal movie kid humor.
Well, yeah, and also they try to, it kind of represents how how people want to change stuff in terms of, like other stuff like the current events of today, but you know what it is,
Yeah.
decent.
Yep. I know all about the B movie memes, and apparently that's
Read-
how the movie is known today. Like, I remember loving B movie as a kid, and just to see all the memes, it was kind of weird, like, oh my god, like, this movie from my childhood, now it's internet famous?
I remember,
and
I remember
entire-
buying the DVD in 2008 at Best Buy, like
I
that,
remember.
like
I
I had
did
the
too.
in
D-
2008, like
I have the
13
DVD
years ago,
too.
about 13 years ago.
Yeah, here's the
God.
interesting thing about the B movie DVD. It had this weird quiz called "Are you B enough?" and it assigned you a role within the Beehive. And
I remember
Yeah.
that.
apparently I got a Paul and Jacques by picking all the worst answers, and I think that's a joke.
Oh my god!
I got
About 10
arrested.
years ago, when I was in like in second grade, we had to watch the B movie in freaking class.
Wow.
I remember I got restroom attendant in that game. Oh god, that says something about me. Now here's the thing about the B movie. It's a meme because people read the entire movie script.
But
What-
hey,
But hey, I mean, why wouldn't it be a meme? The script, once you read it, is just so fucking weird that DreamWorks had to, put all their talent into making it at least somewhat watchable.
yeah. By the way, they got actors from all the animated movies, like from like the Emperor's New Groove. There's freaking Patrick,
God,
Warburton.
you know,
and they
even
had John Goodman as well.
yeah, you know what's interesting about that Patrick Warburton? Like, even as a kid, when I never have heard of Family Guy and only saw my sister watch it every once in a while, I knew that his voice sounded familiar. And I'm like, and then it only took me till like when I was an adult to finally realize, oh, that's Joe Swatson.
Oh.
Yeah,
He
it's
looks
pretty
like
much.
Joe.
Pretty much, he can't really do his own type of voice. He has to in every movie they ask him to do his normal voice.
So that's why there's so many characters that sound like Joe Swatson. So Joe is famous
Just like
without having to leave
just like
his
that one dude
wheelchair.
from Pixar, John Ratzenberger.
Yeah, and we're gonna mention him if we ever talk about the Disney movies and Pixar and stuff like this. They can be multiple episodes within multiple things.
Yeah, after the B movie had a least decent value in terms of quality, they decided to make a movie based in, you know what is it, China.
Yes.
Now here is the biggest movie that ever graced in many ways. In some people, it also equaled one of the best trilogies ever recognized. Now here
Kung
is
Fu Panda.
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Really, chicks? It sounds like it's off tune.
Yeah.
I tried.
Ba-da-da-da, du-du-du-du-du-du-du-du. That's how you do it.
Now that's better.
I was just humming one of the tunes that they repeat in the backgrounds.
Oh, the score.
All right, about Kung Fu
was-
Panda.
Yeah, I was.
Like they
the thing-
decided to bring Jack Black again back from after
Shark
that
Tale.
bust of a Shark Tale. They decided
Yeah.
to bring him back to a better fit
Yeah.
of his role, better than he
Yeah,
had
and they
from like
and
that.
they gave Angelina Jolie a better role as Tigress.
Yeah, two actors that were from Shark Tale actually had better roles than their other characters from the previous DreamWorks
And I
movie, which
actually
was a
remember
bust.
seeing
Shark
this in
Tale.
theaters. And getting all the McDonald's toys. I remember this toy that had like an accelerometer inside it, and I freaking loved how it made those noises when I sent it down the play slide. Memories.
Oh,
I didn't see the movie in theaters. I saw it in, like first weeks of kindergarten when my old kindergarten teacher put that movie when it was originally already new on DVD.
Now here's the thing about okay, yeah, Kung Fu Panda. It was such a good movie. There really wasn't that much that was bad about it.
Yeah,
Not
especially
really.
considering that the title is literally Kung Fu Panda and the premise is Jack Black as a fucking panda. Like, imagine making that as good as Kung Fu Panda is. That takes some talent.
What about? I remember there was a movie. I remember when Karate Kid tried to do their own reboot with Jaden Smith, but it was just basically Kung Fu, which didn't match the title.
Yeah, another thing with Kung Fu Panda is that it was literally like they had behind the scenes with all the sound effects and all this and stuff. Like Dustin Hoffman makes a great old mentor.
Yeah, and just this whole movie's just freaking beautiful, man. Like the
Yeah,
production design, the everything.
everything is beautiful. And I remember I also liked Poe's dad was funny. Oh, Paul!
His adopted dad, actually.
Yeah, his adopted dad. We're gonna get to that, Tonio, once we get to the sequel. Now, speaking of sequels, Madagascar Escape to Africa.
At least that was better than the first movie.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
most
the thing,
people think it's better than the first movie.
and
It
also,
is, because in terms of like approval rates, it is better than the first film because like it had a way better setting than the first movie.
yeah, and the thing is, it's interesting because like you could have previously let Julian behind, but no, we take Julian with him, and then Mort hangs on the plane wing, and also the
There's a shark
penguins
chasing
drive
him as
the
well.
plane. Yeah, and then and then and he returns to his father. And the thing about Madagascar 2 is like it's interesting. I like and also Alec Baldwin makes a good villain. He always did.
He eventually voices someone. We're gonna talk about it.
Yeah, we're not talking about that yet. We'll get to it, of course. The thing
Yeah, but
about
like, well, like
it's-
that should have just been the first. I feel like if the first movie should have been that, how the story, how Alex got to New York.
yeah, and it yeah, you could see it as out of order. Like I think like if you showed both movies and you showed the second one first, it would be kind of funny to find out, oh, that's the sequel? But
Yeah,
it's a good movie, but it's just like sometimes it felt a little cluttered in some
well,
areas.
people thought of it as what Madagascar 1 should have been. How the story of Alex, how he
Um,
came to the zoo.
but it's interesting that like it's a backdoor thing, like how the penguins recruited all those monkeys. Also,
Yeah, they
like
recruit all he said, but of course, like in that one part, like about the ending, and also the old lady from the first movie comes back and she's acting like a
yeah,
dummy.
yeah, the old lady thing. I think, in that opinion, I understand that at the end it's sort of instrumental to the plot on how the water's gone, but they could have done it with just a normal person and it would have made more sense. No, it just would have made just as much sense. What I meant to say,
And
like,
also, that was the last time we saw the old lady and in that
and the
in the
and
franchise.
that old lady literally was. We got to put a gravestone. Rip old lady. She died of heart attack after getting a nightmare about the bad kitty coming back. God, that would have been awesome to see. And what spawned this from this movie is the Penguins of Madagascar, which we've already talked about in last episode, so we're gonna skip
Yeah,
over that.
only one thing we're talking about, like, it's like because of that movie, they had well, it came out around the same time the series killed, but
Yep.
Yeah. And I like how in the description when I remember looking at the wiki, and apparently in the description of when does the Penguins of Madagascar take place in terms of the movies, apparently they say that it's a parallel universe.
Wow.
So that means it doesn't take place with the first or second movie.
well, it makes
So-
sense. It actually makes sense because like the main characters don't really matter that much.
Yeah,
Exactly,
and-
because like it's just a parallel universe where they just kind of don't exist.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't really exist they
Yeah.
just imagine that it's just the penguins and
Yeah,
the
except for
lemur,
the
Juliet, Maurice,
Ex-
and Mort.
yeah. Yeah, unless you count the episode where Skipper loses his memory, and then he has Alex the lion guide him back to the zoo from a deserted island.
I had no idea
Yeah.
that episode existed, but let's move on if we can move on.
All right, let's
Okay,
move to Monsters versus Aliens.
Monsters versus aliens. Oh boy.
Yes, this
Now-
is the movie that popularized 3D in the DreamWorks canon.
Yeah, the thing about Monsters versus Aliens is you got it is. I like to think of it as a mini representation of the fetish of giantess.
Oh
Giant
my god, Ginormica.
girl. Yeah,
Oh yeah, the setting where she's about to get married, but something like there's some
yeah.
type of
I remember that scene. You're glowing. Thank you. No, I mean you're actually glowing.
Like, oh my god, I remembered that.
Yeah.
That was really a good introduction to the plot.
God, I love that. I also then remember when she threw the needle in and it landed on that
like
guy's foot.
like the plot is funny, but like it's like the only few franchises that never got a sequel
No, the thing about Monsters vs. Aliens, it didn't get a
in
sequel. It
terms
got a
of
Yeah, it got a television series that ran for one season because apparently Nickelodeon demanded DreamWorks, we want a third show. They said, oh, why don't we give him a third show of one of our lackluster movies?
yeah.
It's trolling
So, like,
history.
But yeah, speaking of that, like that movie did it had pretty good approval rating, but like in terms of like franchise wise, it wasn't really good after the movie.
Yeah, the characters aren't really that special. Like, Bob is Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen has a funny voice. And Dr. Cockroach, he's just crazy. The missing link, he's just, oh, the radical dude. And Insectosaurus is just a monster, can't talk, and dies halfway in the movie in a cocoon, and then comes back at the end. And then you have that goddamn warmonger guy, the drill sergeant guy, who ran the whole thing. Anyone remember that?
Yeah, I remember,
Yeah.
that's how I learned the most pins are 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, and I remember they kept calling it Area 50 something because they kept getting shot every time they tried to complete it. Isn't Area 50? And I also remember the president. I remember the president who did the keyboard.
Oh my god. Oh my god, that was a great moment.
Oh
Like people were memeing that for months because of that movie.
god
Yeah,
damn! No.
So
And
after
here,
that movie, there's another movie that came out after this.
Yeah.
Another Shrek one. The last tentacle. Now the last
we got something
Shrek.
before
Technically, the
before we
last-
talk.
Oh yeah,
we've
there's
seen
How to
Shrek.
Train Your Dragon.
We gotta talk about How to Train Your Dragon. Like I have
It
never.
was a
I
great
only
movie.
have bad memories about this movie. That's why I never really
Oh,
see it
boy.
anymore.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, by
They
the
say-
way, DreamWorks had a short hiatus for a year after like they didn't make a movie in 2009. That only Monsters vs. Aliens was the only DreamWorks animated movie that came out that year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and here's the thing with How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon is, by most accounts, the best movie DreamWorks has ever made. And apparently, most people who like it these days are fandom girls. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah.
The thing I think about How to Train Your Dragon is simply that I have a bad trauma with this movie. Here's what happened when I was a kid. Me and my school bus, we were going on our way to see it as a special treat. Then we get a flat tire in the middle of nowhere. We get it fixed. But we get there, and by the time we get there, the movie was halfway over.
Oof.
So that's why I've never seen the movie or its sequels ever since.
Oh boy. That's kind of
All
petty,
right,
but
so
whatever.
yeah, the movie is already known as a fandom because of the greatness of the movie and its super high approval rate of 99.
Yeah, 99 on Rotten Tomatoes. Damn.
Damn.
Like the colors, the textures of the animation was really freaking great.
Yeah, and also too, like, the plot was amazing, the characters were great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys could talk about. Okay, so How to Train Your Dragon was great. Unfortunately, the next movie, the end of Shrek, Shrek Forever
great.
After the final chapter,
Wasn't that...
which it literally came out only like 2 months afterwards.
Yeah. And also it kind of had in terms of merchandise, it was successful. I remember McDonald's had the toys.
And honestly, a fourth Shrek movie, if they really wanted to make amends for the third movie's awfulness, they would have had like a more epic tale. But no, this tale is actually quite interesting, but quite awful in the same way.
And also,
They
it's one of the few DreamWorks movies that have a different title in terms of advertising.
Forever After the final chapter, like literally 2 titles. The thing about Shrek Forever After is that Shrek is a big jerk in this movie. Like remember at
yeah.
the beginning, like do the roar, and then Fiona asks him what wrong, and then he yells like, "I wish we never met," and then that's right off the bat, and then he goes to Rumpelstiltskin, who is a midget, because midgets are little people, and he has red hair, so he's also the ginger guy, because he doesn't have a soul. And I'm making references because I can't think of what he was supposed to do. He wanted Shrek's life so he could become king, which makes no sense because that's not what was supposed to be. Like, I know Shrek was saved Fiona in the right time, but that's not a good plot. And Shrek
Not
trying
really.
to fix his relationship in a day is kind of also a bit. It felt like Shrek, but Shrek has to fix everything. That's not a good movie in Shrek universe. The thing about Shrek universe is fixing his first movie is not a fun movie. And they even have the fake out death at the end where Shrek dies and then he comes back. So, in terms of Shrek Forever After, honestly, at least it's the end of Shrek. But the thing is, there's a beginning of a certain character that we'll get to soon. Okay, next movie, Megamind.
Oh
Anyone
man, Megamind. Like, it was actually a very interesting movie. It really introduced me to the concept of the villain winning and then realizing it's not all crapped up to be.
Yeah, honestly, it's a very interesting movie in that regard. I can't think of any other movie that has done that before Megamind. Where, like, the villain wins, and then he doesn't know what to do with the place. And then he literally just goes off depressed, and then he tries to fall in love with the girl that he held captive for a long time. So, sounds like 50 Shades of Grey. And then he finds out, oh, his hero is not dead. And then there's just memes later on about him looking like Markiplier.
Oh my god, the penis music meme. Like, I can't believe that's how Megamind is known today.
It's sad because otherwise it's good. Like, I never listened to penis music. I never listened to it. I just wanted it to pass like the memes I did not like. That's how I felt about that meme. It just like, and I loved Will Ferrell's performance in this.
I did too. Like, his voice was just great for the character that he was trying to play.
Yeah, because Will Ferrell, in some movies he's a wimp, but in most movies he's a wimp, but in this movie he's a badass.
Mm.
Yeah, and then that's the last time we hear Will Ferrell in a DreamWorks movie. Now, in regards of Megamind itself, it's sort of underrated in the grand scheme of DreamWorks movies. When someone thinks of DreamWorks, they think of Shrek, the Bee Movie, and Kung Fu Panda.
Don't you mean Shrek, Madagascar, and Kung Fu Panda?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's what I meant to mean.
Ooh.
Bee movie were probably the fourth guess.
Yeah, one of the actors that were in How to Train Dragon was in Megamind as well. Jonah Hill.
Yup.
And also
we
Ben
got...
Stiller was there too, the voice of Alex.
Yeah.
Also, I remember. So now, from moving from how to Megamind to 2, Kung Fu Panda 2.
Yep, Kung Fu Panda got a sequel.
And it turns out to be
And
just
explain well how the story, how Poe's, it's a story how Poe was,
it got even better. Like
Yeah,
it
Kung Fu Panda
actually,
got even better. Like, what would you expect from Kung Fu Panda 2? Like, it was a great movie. Surprisingly enough.
yeah,
yeah, explain
yeah,
the story of Poe, how he came into,
yeah. I remember Nostalgia Critic's review on this movie. How he said that people cried in the cinema.
Yeah, that's surprising. Like, you would not expect a movie called fucking Kung Fu Panda 2 to do that, but they did it.
Did. I
it was,
remember.
it was at least better than the other sequels that came out in that year,
Yep, Shrek Forever
No.
After. Looking at you.
No, that
No.
year, 2011. Cars.
No,
Oh
here's
boy, Cars 2.
yeah. Here, the thing about Kung Fu Panda 2, yeah, like he said, like it was the most greatest series, and it made the characters more fleshed out.
And also, it was actually, and it was actually a sequel that still focused on the main character, unlike the other company that really didn't focus on the main character.
Yeah, now, speaking of a company focusing on side characters, we have the side character to top all side characters.
Puss
Puss in
Boots.
Boots.
I gotta say, Puss in Boots.
Puss
God
in
damn, this was an awesome movie. I remember loving this in the theater because Puss is such a. Even in Shrek, I feel like this is a theory. I think in Shrek, especially in Shrek 2, especially in like Shrek 3, I feel like Puss's character was like tied up and restrained. Like he couldn't do his. Antonio Banderas could not do his full performance. So maybe he's like, I want my own movie. And so the character gets his own movie, which apparently is way better than the past two Shrek sequels.
Yeah.
So,
And
because
at least it followed the main thing of a side character more than like the other company ever did with in terms of the title.
yeah, and this takes place before Puss met Shrek.
Yeah, this is before this is pretty much a prequel to Shrek 2.
Now, yeah, the thing, and it's interesting is you begin to realize Puss makes a better main character than Shrek. You know
And
that
also,
feeling?
this is one of the yeah. This is one of the this is one of the great one of the best one of the best
Spin-offs.
prequels like prequels even prequels like in other company like what they did with Monsters.
Oh boy,
Now, yeah.
Monsters University.
Yeah, now here's the other. Yeah, now here's before we go to Madagascar 3, which we're going to talk about in just a sec, we have to take light in what happened on Netflix. The Puss in Boots had a cartoon.
Which
The
was all right, but not the best in terms of
The
product.
Adventures of Puss in I binge watched all 6 seasons, and I have to say, in terms of the cartoons as a whole, I think Puss in Boots is like in the top 5 of the DreamWorks cartoons. Because the cartoon takes place at such a nice place called San Lorenzo. And also, they got the girl from Glee to be the other cat in the. And the thing about it expands on it's basically if Shrek was a series, and also because it, in my opinion, it should have had a chance. Because in Shrek there was never a series, but with Puss in Boots, turns out Puss in Boots makes a great main character for a cartoon series. Now, and it even got an interactive later on after the series ended, which was even fun, which is pretty interesting to see a Netflix interactive starring Puss in Boots getting to decide what he does. It's like Telltale on your TV. Now regarding Puss in Boots' success, let's go to a movie that is questionable in a lot of ways. Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted.
Which is way better than which had a way approval better than the second and the first movie.
Yeah, the thing about Madagascar 3 is it upped everything as well, because it actually shown, like, you after Madagascar 2, you think that, like, oh, they're happy in Africa. Maybe but then you realize in the third movie, they're not happy in Africa. Which
They
they,
really want to get out. They want, but like in the beginning, it's like when it's like kind of like the same way how it ended in the second film. The penguins go to somewhere, but in this part they go to somewhere other place.
yeah. And this time, the four main characters and the Gleamers get some balls and actually try to go after the penguins. Except for Gloria, who's a girl.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
still,
gonna.
I still don't like how they shipped Gloria and Melvin.
Well,
In.
honestly, it's been that way sort of since the first movie, and even in the second movie, like you could tell that was what was happening from the beginning. At least they try to work up to it, and then you have the circus animals and what happened with them. Like, it's quite interesting. And then you have
Well,
Then you have that internet meme that lasted forever. I'm gonna do it. Da, 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 circus, da, 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 Afro circus, Afro circus, Afro polka dot, polka dot, polka dot, Afro.
Oh my god, that's actually my sister's friend's ringtone. That was her ringtone for a while.
Yeah. Oh god. And then it was a nice movie in terms of, like, ending their arc of the story. Now, when I say their arc, we're going to get to that very soon. But here's another movie that I didn't see, but is kind of interesting in some other things because it spawned fan fictions.
that's the
Rise of
last
the
Paramount movie ever, too, right? It's the last Paramount.
Exactly, and I'm pretty much gonna mute for this episode after we get to Crude, so I might as well say something about Rise of the
All right.
Guardians. Nothing.
Yeah, this is this is the end of an era.
Yep, the end of an era for DreamWorks. Then they lost the deal, and now starting with Crudes, they got to Fox, which is
Now-
Disney.
God.
Yeah, now here's the thing about, you guys have to talk about Rise of the Guardians because I know nothing about it. All
Rise
I
of
know
the
is
Guardians
that
basically a movie of a guy named Jack Frost who's this is kind of related to Frozen, who has like powers
Ice powers. And
ice powers.
and it
And he
teams up.
and teams up with like mythical
I
creatures.
Yeah, I
Santa
believe-
Claus, Sandman, the Easter Bunny, the
Tooth Fairy. Yeah, and honestly, the movie didn't look that good. And looking at I know the approval rating was 74, but honestly, I think it should be less. It doesn't.
It was good. The movie was good. It's just people
It
thought
was-
of it as just a,
It's forgettable in one way. Now, like DSim said, after this movie, it was bought by Fox because Family Guy needed more fodder to stick in Peter's asshole. Because
Alrighty. I might
Speaking
as well
of-
just mute now since I don't really have much to say after this.
okay, it's my turn. So basically, now from starting with Fox, we go to the Caveman episode of SpongeBob, or the Caveman episode of Family Guy, and we're going the Caveman Powerpuff Girls. No, this is very crude for me to understand. Oh yes, the Croods. Now, the Croods is a movie that is very what's me try to say? It's like it's dumb, but not dumb. Interesting yet boring. It's just all around middle of the road. Because you get to see Nicolas Cage as a caveman. Because Nicolas Cage wasn't already a meme already. Oh god. And then the Croods basically have it's a simple movie, like simpleton in terms of caveman. And cavemen are designed as simple, but the movie is about evolving into modern man. But Nicolas Cage doesn't want to cage the cage of the rat of his own subconscious because he's too listening to Guy, and the Guy is in love with Eep, and Eep is another DreamWorks character that they made thick and have big breasts because DreamWorks loves doing that. And the Croods, it got a decent approval, 71, 587 and million in profit. But the thing about the Croods is that, like Shark Tale, it hasn't aged well. And speaking of other things about the Croods that were horrible, let's talk about the cartoon real quick. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. Because the Croods have a cartoon. It's called Dawn of the Croods. You know what the Croods should have had for a cartoon? It should have happened after the movie, not before the movie when they were all still Not Be Afraid. Dawn of the Croods was literally the worst things I've ever seen on Netflix. Actually, no, we're gonna get to some other worst things I've seen on Netflix. Something I forgot to mention. Now thing about Croods is that Croods may have not been the best DreamWorks movie, but it wasn't boring. It's like it actually was a fun ride. But if you're looking for a fun ride for our next film, we're gonna have to go at a snail's pace. We're gonna have wait, the snail's fast. Whoa, those snails are fast. Oh right, we're talking about Turbo next. The thing about Turbo is that the way I see Turbo as a movie is it's not interesting in the slightest. You want to know why? It's literally the same recycled story of big person with talent comes to help small folk town out and get them on the map. Or big show person. Like, it's literally the same story as Cars and Planes. Hell, even Planes did this movie better. And Planes was nothing more than a reboot of Cars. And the reason why Turbo is the way it is because Turbo I like to see as a cartoon pilot. Because you want to know why I see it as a cartoon pilot? Because the cartoon was a million times better. Turbo Fast was what Turbo should have been, because Turbo looks a lot better in 2D than he does in than he does in 3D. And he actually is a better character. Even though he's not voiced by Ryan Reynolds, the Fast crew in the show actually act a lot more fleshed out. This is just one of those instances where the cartoon is better than the movie it's based on. And trust me, we're going to run into things that are better than that later on. Hold on. I need my Mountain Dew. Okay, so in terms of Turbo Fast, I say that show gets a plus. Unlike the movie it's based on, which in my opinion just is kind of flat-tired or cracked shell. I'm bad at puns. Speaking of movies that have show spin-offs, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, which is interesting in the fact that it's based on something from Rocky and Bullwinkle, and basically another Hanna-Barbera type show. Now, this movie, best movie I've ever seen. It's one of the most interesting movies I've ever seen because Mr. Peabody is such an interesting character. Like, he's fun. Like, he's that. Everyone likes British people because, like, British people can do a lot of cool things. Now, the thing about Mr. Peabody is he's sort of a Mary Sue, but he's sort of not. Like, he's like that fine line where a Mary Sue can be acceptable or not. And Sherman is a kid. He's a ginger. Because gingers have souls, unlike Rumpelstiltskin. Because Mr. Peabody and Sherman is just a movie that it's got great animation. And also it has Patrick Warburton as one of the people from Sparta. Because he's got that voice. we gotta use that voice. And the way back is a beautiful machine. And also, Miss Grunion got what she deserves. And send back to the cast. Oh god, okay, that one was made. There's another one made by Pacific Data. Also, it did pretty well. Like it made its quota. It had 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, How to Train Your Dragon 2. God, all I know is people said it was a good movie. And it performed well, great. Like, it had 621 million. The thing about How to Train Your Dragon 2 I had to think of is that I tried my best to ignore it because of my trauma with the first one. Because all I know is that there was more dragons, more beautiful shit. Now, if only there was some things to be found. Now, our next film is going to be something interesting. Like, remember how I said in Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, that, like, it was the end of their arc? Well, we get the next arc. Penguins of Madagascar. No, like, that's the show. The thing about Penguins of Madagascar is, it's interesting in the way because it feels like an extended episode of the show. It feels like the series finale of the show. Speaking of that was, and it really performs well. Like, you get to see the Penguins do everything. Team up with the North Wind, battling an octopus. Technically, in the show, their arch nemesis was a space squid, but close enough. Dave. And I also remember that meme where the penguins attain the N-word curse. Mrs. Obama, I've stopped racism. Thank you, Skipper. I'm now reading. And destroy. Mrs. Obama, get down. Okay, I'm not gonna say it. But Skipper's luck. Oh, in terms of penguins, it really is an interesting thing because, like, it may have only got 73 on Rotten Tomatoes, but it performed because it basically tried to ape what Puss in Boots did. And it did okay. And speaking of, before we talk about the next movie, which is less, I'm going to talk about the cartoon that followed this movie. It's not about the penguins, but in terms of cartoons overall, I say the next cartoon I'm talking about is All Hail King Julian on Netflix, which can only be described by so many suburbalatives. It literally is, in my opinion, is like number 2 behind Penguins. Actually number 4, because Kung Fu Panda's number 2, and I believe Puss in Boots would be actually it's number 3. Puss in Boots is number 4. That's my Netflix show, DreamWorks show ranking. So it's literally number 3 in my opinion in quality and in interesting. Because All Hail King Julian, if you got Netflix, you should binge watch that because it's definitely worth the watch. It's the true prequel of Madagascar as a whole. The true prequel. And we're going to talk about the not true prequel at the end of this rank. Because the true prequel of Madagascar actually knows what it's doing. It shows how King Julian became a king. It showed how he how he actually gave a shit about his kingdom. And it actually showed that he wanted to try to be a good leader and wasn't always a jerkbag that cared only about himself. Sure, that was a lot of the episodes in some way, but at least he tried to actually be a king, unlike some other characters Now, you think about King Julian. It had 6 lovely seasons. One of the seasons was actually an arc. God, and even had a girl lemur named Clover who could kick ass. Oh God, that's gonna be something I
Clover,
could
that's
talk about
Schloff.
later on. Oh God, Clover, one day we'll run together. And okay, oh sorry. So
Clover, that's
Penguins of
Schloff.
Madagascar. Oh damn it, scared me. Now Penguins of Madagascar was an interesting movie. Now, here's a movie that's got many questions that is hard to explain. Honestly, where are we going? Oh wait, are we going home? Oh yeah, we're talking about Home. Now, Home is a movie that had some big expectations when you get the Big Bang Theory guy himself, Jim Parsons, as an alien, and you get Rihanna, the Rihanna, as the girl that helps him. The issue is with Home is that I'm gonna say it. It's boring. And every 10 minutes they have to shoot every 5 to 10 minutes they have to shoehorn in another Rihanna song because Rihanna was big. Home was not big. In fact, in the grand scheme of things, Home was pretty small with a 50% approval rating. Let me put it into perspective. What made more than Home? Shrek Forever After made more than Home. The Croods made more than Home. Like, so in Home, Home was just not a good movie. It really flunked out in 2015, like a lot of movies in 2015 that shouldn't. And this is the year where Inside Out happened, which is hard. And this came out a few months before Inside Out. But then again, it's not as trailing as the Minion movie. Now, speaking of Home being like one of the most boringest episode, the next episode, the next cartoon we're going to talk about is Home Adventures with Tip and O, which I've mentioned in the last episode in the Nickelodeon while I was talking about Sanjay and Craig, because it has the exact same creator as Sanjay and Craig, and the same animation, and it pulls it off a million times better than that show ever could, because DreamWorks and Netflix actually knew some quality control, unlike Nickelodeon. And they were able to pull off the wacky animation potential that Sanjay and Craig just did not have the capability. It makes you think a big company like Nickelodeon unable to master an animation style in some ways, and letting Netflix and DreamWorks master that animation style. Yeah, also the songs fit better in Home, the TV series. Now, off the heels of one of the better DreamWorks cartoons that's possibly the greatest ending of a trilogy in the universe. Kung Fu Panda 3. Now, with Kung Fu Panda 3, there was a lot of expectations with this movie. And damn, did it deliver. Everything went better. Really better. If you thought Kung Fu Panda was good, the sad thing about Kung Fu Panda is it didn't make as much in gross as the second movie. But it sure made up for it with sure firepower. Kai is one of the best and interesting villains I've ever known. And defending all of Kung Fu and learning how to do Chi and getting in touch with both of his fathers that's and getting in touch with every other panda in the entirety of China. That's just a recipe for an exact superlatives and superboles. Now, having said that, Kung Fu Panda 3 was just a miracle in the dusk. You want to know why? Because 2016 started off with the worst movie ever made, Norm of the North. And only a few days later, Kung Fu Panda 3 aired and saved us all. So that's the true heroism of Kung Fu Panda, and a great ending success to the Kung Fu Panda franchise. Now, what other franchises do we have on this list? Oh, have you ever been on the internet? Well, I think I'm getting trolled because apparently the next movie we have to talk about with my monocle is Trolls. Now, Trolls. Let's go over Trolls. Well, it tries to be Shrek. It tries to be Shrek very much. It really loves to be Shrek. Poppy, Branch, Justin Timberlake. It's the only thing about... Even as that dance party ending, people seem to catch on to. The only thing is it fits with Trolls because all they do is dance and sing and then get attacked by a fucking burger because they don't know how to do a defense, unlike Branch, which Branch is one of the most relatable characters. He's like the only relatable character in the movie. If you don't like songs, you're gonna hate this movie. If you don't like flashy colors, you're gonna hate this movie. If you don't like Poppy singing all the time, you're gonna hate this movie. If you don't like sheer positivity, you're gonna hate this movie. And the sad part is that it didn't gross well, only having 346 million. Which is funny because Home made more money than that movie. And Home was on a higher budget, but it kind of balances it out. So Fox wanted a new flashy thing to replace Shrek. Well, Trolls replaced Shrek. And not only did Trolls replace Shrek, Trolls got a Netflix series too. Actually, I gotta talk about two Netflix series, because I skipped one when I talked about Mr. Peabody and Sherman. First, we'll talk about the Trolls one. Trolls one, The Beat Goes On. It's a show about positivity. It's basically My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, DreamWorks version! Because that's what this world needs. It needs more and more and more positivity squeezed out of little cutesy wootsy colorful characters. If you're watching this end page, when you don't know true friendship unless you watch that show. And the Mr. Peabody and Sherman show, garbage. It put shame to the movie. That's how bad of a Netflix show it is. It's just as bad as Dawn of the Croods. Don't watch it, please. Okay, back on track. What happens after Trolls? I mean, they already milked the hell out of Shrek in Trolls. What is the next step? I need to call my boss. Oh, my boss is a baby. Oh, my boss has Alec Baldwin in his voice. My boss baby. It's the boss baby. The thing about the boss baby is that the boss baby is weird because it had almost twice the grossing of Trolls, but cut the approval rating in half. It went from 75 to 52. The thing about the boss baby is that Alec Baldwin he has got such a hypnotic voice. That's probably one reason why you'd rather listen to Alec Baldwin smoothly talking to you than hear Justin Timberlake screaming pop songs into your ear. So that's the comparison I have and the prediction of why The Boss Baby turned out better. The Boss Baby turned out better because apparently people like Alec Baldwin, even though I remember this one line from South Park that I heard in a SpongeBob edited video. Alec Baldwin's an asshole. I think it was from so thing of the Boss Baby. It's a decent movie. I'd like to put Boss Baby in the same category as B movie because Boss Baby is an interesting movie, but the issue is it's not as good as DreamWorks points it out to be. God, my throat's getting sore. Okay, we're almost out of the Fox age. We're about to... Now!
We are about
Now,
to
here
enter.
is the final movie in the Fox age. Boss Baby also got a series, but we're not going to talk about it because I've never seen it, and since I've never seen it, I wouldn't have an opinion. Now, the final episode of
The final episode of the Fox era. Captain
Yeah,
Underpants, the first epic
Captain
movie.
Under. I remember loving this movie. You want to know what's funny is that like it made it was on a 38 million budget.
Yeah, and oddly enough, it was actually made not by DreamWorks Animation, but by Micros Image. DreamWorks just produced it.
Yeah, which is interesting because then they have the rights, and then because they have the rights, they were able to make a Netflix show. And it's interesting that I'm actually surprised that that the creator of Captain Underpants was able to write his own movie and be one of the writers. Because with projects like that, they usually kick the main creator right out.
Yeah,
And it's awesome because you have Kevin Hart in the movie. He's awesome. And you have Ed Helms as the Captain Underpants. Ed Helms was the guy who sung "How Bad Can I Be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be?" Yeah, we're gonna talk about that movie once we talk about Miscellaneous People, aka Illumination. Now, the sad thing is that although this is the end of the Fox era, the movies just keep piling on. It's interesting, it turned up quite a profit. It was very popular despite being called Captain Underpants.
Yeah, oddly
And the
enough.
thing, and it actually managed to pull off toilet humor better than Fleshed Away. Even in a 3D movie, they were able to make jokes about that type of stuff.
Yeah, because they were trying to replicate 2D.
Yeah, and replicating 2D is hard. I mean, just look at Robot Monster. That tried to replicate 2D. I could tell. Now, having said that, we finally get out of Fox's claws and we watch Peter Griffin get dragged down to hell.
Yes, something happened on the way to the next movie. You know why no DreamWorks movies were released in 2018? Because they were in the process of getting bought out by Universal Pictures, who would go on to distribute all their stuff from that point onward. So far, they've distributed 4 films, and here we are today.
Oh god, my throat's sore. I can't do. Okay, so How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, aka another one I don't know anything about. So I'll let you do it, Decent.
I don't really know much about that either. I don't really know much
Okay.
about the Universal era at all.
Okay, let me just try and translate Dragon to get this over with. Roar, roar, roar. Okay, it was a good movie, and 5,091% bullshit now. This is another movie I haven't seen, but it's called Abominable. We're gonna talk about Abominable Snowmen's now. This is what we're going. It's interesting. It's got Universal Pictures and something called Pearl Studio.
Yeah, the thing with Abominable is that I haven't seen this one either, but the thing with this is that This is basically just DreamWorks trying to, appease the Chinese market. Like, Kung Fu Panda didn't do that enough.
The thing about Abominable is that it looked like they were trying to push a new franchise, and apparently, unfortunately, this franchise didn't look good.
Alright.
The characters didn't look like they were gonna last. Now, this is a movie I have seen, like, multiple times. Thank you, Stevie, my nephew. Trolls World Tour. Now, the thing about Trolls World Tour is it's a sequel, but it's a different type of sequel that completely ignores the events of the end of the events of the original. There's no Bergens in it. It's just Barb, some rock star tomboy who wants to take over the world with rock. And guess what? You want to know the funny thing about this one is that they have Justin Timberlake voicing Branch, but whenever he sings, that's not Justin Timberlake singing. That's someone else singing. Because they couldn't pay... They paid him to voice the character, but they didn't pay him enough to sing. It's funny that the budget strains, because this is the first movie that wasn't released, that didn't have a release in theaters. So, in retrospect, it was made on a $100 million budget, but it's actually the least grossing movie of DreamWorks, even lower than El Dorado, because of COVID. COVID literally killed the Trolls.
Oh.
But unfortunately, yeah, so it wasn't. So Barb actually got her way and made everyone into zombies, but under COVID. So basically, Rock equals COVID, and Barb is the queen of COVID. That's the new.
And apparently, The Croods got a sequel, but I don't think any of us have seen that, and I don't think we can comment.
No. Here's the thing about the Crude sequel. This is something I'm gonna mention that I haven't mentioned so far. The thing about Crudes having a sequel is you should have given it to another movie. Like, why'd you give it to Crudes? Crudes didn't even do well. Most people hate Crudes. Let me give you a few movies I think should have got the sequel. I think they should have given a sequel to Over the Hedge. I think they should have given a sequel to Monsters vs. Aliens, because at least you could have improved on a different storyline rather than the cartoon did. Give a sequel to Megamind. Will Ferrell, I don't think he's that hard to reach.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. Like, Megamind should have had a sequel. It was sequel worthy.
And yet it doesn't. And Over the Hedge, I could have at least seen them having a sequel, because, like, I'd love to see what kind of shenanigans they could pull off in a second film. Maybe they have to go. Maybe if they go have to go fight that bear again, or maybe another sequel that could have pulled off. Let me see. I think they might be planning Madagascar 4. I don't know, but and also. Another movie they could have had a sequel to. What if they went all the way back and actually tried to do something big? Make a 2D movie. Road to El Dorado 2. That'd be interesting in the fact that, like,
yeah, but Road to El Dorado 2, though, that would be a very weird idea, especially considering that Road to El Dorado isn't really that popular nowadays to really, warrant a sequel these days. Like, if they made a sequel to Road to El Dorado, then it would be a big deal.
Yeah, and hell, even Shark Tale could have had a better sequel than The Croods. At least in Shark Tale, maybe you could flesh them out a little bit more, fix their flaws in the sequel, have a bigger adventure. Like, these are the things that make you think. Like, what were they thinking? Just like the nerd always says. Hell, even Home could have had a sequel. I could see it be called something like Home Again. It's like a parody. Like, it could just be like, you can have it be on an alien adventure, trying to find home. Oh, actually being brave for once and actually trying to take on another alien invasion. that's actually, and I could see it like Home actually becoming a serious film. Now, be that as it may, the Crew's a new age. I may look at it at another future date. But be that as it may, Trolls World Tour is the least successful movie in terms of gross.
Yes.
Which is
Go ahead,
which
Six.
it probably would have been at least as good as the original Trolls, which the original Trolls was 346 million, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, I don't know, but 23.2 million, that is bankrupting in some cases. Because not enough people bought it on demand.
Well, obviously not, because apparently Trolls World Tour made bank on VOD. Like, they would have made more than they would have released it in theaters. Then,
God damn. Yeah, now we have to talk about a few dishonorable mentions of the future of DreamWorks. We have their Spirit Untamed, which is just nay all over again. Now, the next, and then finally, something we should talk about is The Boss Baby Family Business. It's coming out this year.
oh
And
God.
the thing about since you heard about my rambling, The Boss Baby, you know that it falls under the category of like B-movie experimental type things, which I still don't understand how it got a Netflix series, and now it's getting a sequel. Because well, here's the thing. They hinted at the sequel at the end of the movie. But the thing is, you don't know that it's a sequel. It could have just been a joke or a coincidence. But no, that was supposed to be hinting of the second movie. I hate when movies do that. They hint at a second movie, and then when you expect there to be a second movie, but there never is. Then that's something. No. Oh yeah, Joseph King of Dreams. Yeah, that was a movie. No.
I think
Now,
we can wrap things up.
the final thing I have to talk about is things to mention at the end. Yeah. Trollstopia. The Hulu version of the Trolls series. Because as of it been bad enough, they had to have another series that took place after the second movie. Because more Friendship is Magic clones. And then a Madagascar, A Little Wild. And Milking Madagascar, for all it's worth, this time they actually make a show about the main characters. Which in my opinion is the worst idea. Because the main characters were boring. They're not... As babies, of course. Because we need a baby show.
Oh my God, a baby Madagascar, like, I cannot believe that fucking exists. Wow.
Yeah, it does. That's why it's called A Little Wild.
Oh my God. Babification is fucking back in full swing and I hate it.
Oh god. And that, friends, is every DreamWorks movie rated and reviewed. And a good chunk of them by myself. Because the YRC hates Fox.
Yes, exactly. So, I guess this wraps up the SmackDown. The next SmackDown will be about Pokemon. And here are a few things
Once
to look
again,
forward to.
it will be Tex talking again. So yeah.
And
Yeah.
we get to have Nick in SmackDown for the first time.
Exactly, and here are a few things to look forward to in the meantime. Jotbugs Rumble, that's tomorrow.
Yay.
On the YRC Livestreams channel. And on
Yes.
YRC Network,
And Monday,
make sure to
there's
check out the Raw.
Yeah.
So, bye-bye.